This is the October 2nd, 2019 regular meeting of the Ojai Planning Commission. Members of the public wishing to address the Planning Commission on items not appearing on the agenda are required to complete a speaker's card and file it with the secretary. The cards are available in the lobby, so out through the double doors. Speakers should state their name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Comments must be directed to the commission, not the audience. While Planning Commission is in session, all in attendance are expected to maintain order and decorum and to obey the orders of the chair. So we're going to start with our roll call.
Vice Chair Nolan.
Here.
Commissioners Corbin.
Here.
Lottis.
Here.
Powers.
Here.
Chair Quillisi absent.
Okay, Pledge of Allegiance. Ray, would you please lead us?
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next is public communications. This is the time set aside at the Planning Commission meeting for members of the public to address Planning Commission on items of city business other than scheduled agenda items. Matters raised at this time may be briefly discussed by the commission, will generally be referred to staff and or placed on a subsequent agenda. Under state law, other than for emergency items, no action can be taken at this meeting. And I don't believe I have any speakers card. Is there anyone who would like to come up at this point in time? No?
This is just for the agenda item.
Yeah, right. This is public communication, so not agendized items. No? Okay. So we're going to move on to the consent items. Well, I should say item because there's only one. All matters, well, we can just skip that. So basically the one item we have is the minutes of the regular meeting of Planning Commission from September 18th, 2019. Do we have any discussion or comments on the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the Planning Commission minutes of September 18th, 2019.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay. Roll call?
Corbin.
Yes.
Nolan.
Yes.
Lottis.
Yes.
Powers.
Yes.
Okay. Next, we have disclosure of site visits and ex parte contacts. Start with Commissioner Corbin.
I visited the site and had no ex parte contacts.
Good. I also visited the site and had no ex parte contacts.
I've also visited the site and have no ex parte contacts.
I visited the site and had no ex parte contact.
Okay, we're going to move on to our discussion item. And this is a concept review, CR 19-001, to modify the existing CUP for a senior living facility and for a tentative tract map for a 9-lot subdivision, 8 single-family residential lots, and 1 lot for the existing senior living facility, located at 701 North Montgomery Street and 710 Olive Street. The assessor's parcel numbers are 022-0-023-020, 022-0-230, -050, and 022-0-01221. Okay. The general plan designation of the site is medium-high density residential, and the zoning classification of the site is single-family residential, medium-low density. A categorical exemption to the California Environmental Quality Act is not required for a concept review. The property owners are the Gables of Ojai, LLC, David Brown, and the representative applicant is Whitman Architectural Design, Mark Whitman, the architect. So I think we'll start, not I think, but we will start with our staff report, please.
Thank you. And I appreciate having the opportunity to make a brief introduction. Obviously, this is a fairly complex project, as evidenced by an 11-page or 10-page concept review report, which is not typical. But there's a lot of history to it. I want to start quickly by just, for people who are not familiar, noting that a concept review is a early review held to obtain necessary public input at a publicly noticed meeting. So it's an opportunity for the public to attend and weigh in on the project. No approvals can be issued at a concept review, so no approvals will be issued tonight. And in fact, the city's municipal code encourages applicants to request a concept review early for complex land use issues to get feedback from the public and the planning commission as well. So that's why we're here. Now, the project that we are here to have a concept review of is, as mentioned, the Gables request to modify an existing CUP and for a tentative tract map for a 9-lot subdivision. At this time, the Gables has an active, exercised, and valid CUP that requires them to build an additional 26 senior units, or allows them to build an additional 26 senior units, construction of 63 kitchenettes, 3 dining rooms, and a parking lot. To date, 44 of the 63 kitchenettes have been installed. They have not completed the other projects associated with the CUP and are requesting the modification. As noted in the staff report, there are improvements that would be required as mitigation measures once they have begun to build the additional 26 units, but those units have not been initiated, so the mitigation measures have not triggered. At this time, the Gables is requesting to revise that CUP and the subdivision from the addition of 26 units of senior housing, which is what's currently under the CUP, to now an 8-unit subdivision of single-family homes. The applicant will provide additional details on their proposed project in a few moments. As a reminder, the Planning Commission's role at this meeting is to receive commentary from the public, highlight any issues requiring resolution, and to provide general feedback comments to the applicant. Staff is present for any questions, and with that, I think typically we have the applicant make the presentation.
But any questions at this moment or at time for staff?
Just one question. So there was the requirement to merge lots. I think there were 3 properties. I wasn't sure which 3 those were, but so that never happened. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, because they did need a building permit, right, to do what they did? They did need to have a building permit for what they've already done.
To do the work they've already done?
Yeah.
My understanding is they have not pulled any building permits for any work that's already been done.
Well, no, they would have pulled a building permit, but the work didn't require a new building.
Well, it says,
Oh,
But it was interior
yeah, it's
work?
prior to issuance of a grading permit or building permit. They were supposed to do that. So I just want clarification, that's all I'm asking.
yeah, and there is a
We
point.
can confirm that
Right
point, but
there.
my understanding is that the work that was to add new units was never done, and therefore they
correct.
never pulled
A building.
the associated improvements that would have tied to that mitigation measure,
I see.
including the lot merger to facilitate the parking lot.
Right.
Good. Any other questions at this time for staff? No? Good. Then can we hear from the applicant?
Ms. Chairman and members of the commission, members of the staff, especially Mr. James Vega, who I appreciate all the effort you put into bringing this project forward. I know it was a complex issue, and it took a lot of thought and time to put this together. I am Mark Whitman, architect at 111 Topa Topa Street, and a lifelong resident of Ojai. And for those of you who do not know me, I began my architecture career in Mr. Gartrell's drafting class at Matilla Junior High School. And I have been blessed to be able to contribute to Ojai's built environment since working with Zelma Wilson in the 1970s. I have given back to my community by donating my services to over 10 public projects throughout the valley, including the Libby Park Bandstand, the Rotary Park Bus Stop, and most recently, the Rotary Peace Pavilion at Matilha Junior High School. I also served on this commission for 7 years, back in the 90s. I sat right where Ray is sitting, and there was an older gentleman named David Hirschberg who sat next to me, and he had raised his family here in the 60s, and he was, at the time, he was very distressed about the changes that were happening in the 90s, and he would always tout he wished he could build gates at the entry of Ojai and have everyone bring in bicycles and horse and carriages to travel around Ojai. That was, almost every meeting he said that. And so, you know, there was changes happening then, and I think about the same kind of responses back in the 90s. I'm here tonight to representing the Gables. I'm accompanied by my associate, Shannon Dodge, and the manager of the Gables, David Scarlett, who is here to answer any questions regarding the Gables. We are here to present a proposal for a lot line adjustment and a CUP modification to the Gables of Ojai Assisted Living Facility. The purpose of the lot line adjustment is to create 8 buildable lots for new single-family homes. The Gables wish to develop and sell these lots. The property in question is a 2.2 acre of vacant land adjacent to the Gables to the west of the Gables. The property is currently part of the Gables CUP, and we are proposing to separate out this property from the CUP. The Gables currently own 12 legal lots in various configurations spread over the 8.4 acres. This proposal would rearrange these parcels into 8 buildable lots with a lot left over for the Gables facility and a future road easement to the north of the Gables. The 8 new lot lines have been placed to protect the existing trees on the vacant lot. And so they're not all in conformance. Some are bigger and some are smaller, but they have an average size that conforms to the zoning. We placed the lot lines to protect that one big, beautiful sycamore tree in the middle of it, and so the buildings could be built around that. And there's another dense grove of oak trees that we have placed the lot lines to protect those trees. A meandering park-like sidewalk is proposed along Olive Street with bulb outs for trees and street parkings in between the trees. We are proposing arbolata-style curbs and natural Ojai, with natural Ojai stone, and various other improvements are being proposed, which included, but are not limited to, a pedestrian pathway along the north property line, so it connects the Olive Street over to Montgomery Street with a pedestrian pathway. And there's various drainage improvements, which we've had several meetings with the Public Works Director that he is proposing, including a new curb and sidewalk on Grand Avenue. Back in 2000, the Gables came to the city with a request for a CUP because of the licensing requirements. The property did not have a land use permit at that time. The condition of the current CUP, which was issued in 2001, allows the Gables to increase the number of senior living units by 26 for a total of 108 units. The Gables do not desire to make this expansion of the 26 units, but wish to create 8 single-family lots, which are more appropriately suited for the neighborhood. The Gables asked for these 26 units as part of the CUP in 2001 in case in the future the need for these additional units arose. Because they do not wish to disturb the existing Gables facility and the lack of need, these units were never constructed. There has been discussion of the legality of the 12 legal lots because there exists a condition in the CUP to combine the lots together. However, it was the understanding of the Gables and those involved with the CUP that if the 26 new units were built, the lots would be combined. The only improvements which were part of the CUP were additions of the kitchenettes, and there's one dining room that they added. They took out some units and added a communal dining room. These improvements do not warrant the loss of these valuable legal lots. To assure their value, their 12 legal lots, and to assure the value of the 12 legal lots were maintained, and to avoid confusion in the future, the Gables had the city certify these lots. And these are the certifications up on the board right now. These certifications were issued in 2009 after the CUP improvements occurred. If there's any gray area, they did this to avoid any confusion or any what we're encountering right now. But if there's any gray area concerning the legality of the certification of these lots in the CUP, this can be clarified in the modified CUP. Because of the Ojai area plan does not allow projects which will increase the peak hour trips down Highway 33, a proposal like this would not usually be considered. However, this proposal involves existing legal lots that the Gables currently own and were already given already given the okay for new construction. Like the rest of the state, we have a housing shortage issue in the Ojai Valley, in part due to this Highway 33 policy of not allowing for new market rate units in the valley. The supply and demand principle rings true. When supply is low and demand is high, the prices go up. Our school systems are suffering due to the extreme bad affordability index in our community. This low index is a result of very high housing costs and relatively low incomes per household. Ojai has higher than average property values, but lower than average families per household. The graph there shows Ojai is the lowest. And the graphic there, it talks about, on the left is the Ventura County averages of income per household at $82,000, and Ojai is at $70,000. We're the third lowest city in the county as far as income per household. There's Santa Paula and Fillmore below us, but we're right above that, those levels. So the residents of these market rate lots will boost our economy with their buying power, and because the lots are suited for multiple bedrooms, there will be an opportunity for young families to buy into the market, which will add to the school system. I think one of the problems we're having with our schools is we have an aging population here in Ojai, and the people are staying and not leave. They've raised their kids like myself, and they're not leaving, and so there's no new housing to replace, for families. These new residences will be built with state-of-the-art water and energy-efficient systems with solar power, electric car hookups, and the newest green technologies. And for those of you worried about the changes in Ojai, I would like to close by saying this proposal is rare because of the 12 existing lots. This proposal is not the floodgates opening that will flood Ojai. It is a relief valve to lessen the pressure of our housing needs. This project will provide a little more of the canvas for us designers and architects to able to create and lighten spaces to maybe change the lives of Ojai residences in a positive way. That is why I am representing this project tonight. I think Winston Churchill said it best, and I quote, "We shape our buildings, and thereafter our buildings shape us." If the neighbors who are here tonight believe this proposal does not belong in this neighborhood, then where in Ojai does a project like this belong? And where is there another opportunity in Ojai like this one? So I'd just like to say, to be responsible planners and to address our housing needs, I think we need to seriously consider this project. And if you have any questions for David Scarlett, the Oaks, he's here tonight.
Any questions, commissioners, for the applicant?
Probably a question for David. So comments that we got were regarding parent-employee parking on the street, and I'm just wondering if you could talk about why is there not enough space on site for employees and residents to park, or what? Can you help clarify that? What's going on?
Hi, I'm David Scarlett, Executive Director of the Gables. The parking, I don't know the exact amount of parking spaces we have, but the parking spaces are for the residents. And so parking on site for staff is very limited. At the moment, there's just myself and one of my managers parks on site, and we have to park in the street, the rest of the staff.
Is there any plan to address that?
Let me just state one thing. I am not the owner of the Gables. I manage the property. This lot itself, I'm not really involved that much in it. Unfortunately, the owners could not be here today, so they asked me to just come along if there are any questions about the Gables.
Okay, thanks.
Is that something, Mark, would you be able to answer that question about the parking? Or do you have that information? Or we can repeat the question if you need to. Sorry.
I brought David here to answer those kind of questions.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't realize there was a parking problem, to tell you the truth.
Right, well, I know we had it in our staff report. It sounded like there was limited parking for the employees, and apparently they're parking on the street, so I guess what we're hearing is we're not sure what the answer is at this point. Is that correct? Okay.
I think, part of the modified CUP, we can address those or any other issues that are concerns of the neighbors.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions right now for the applicant? Nope. All right, so I guess we'll close or we'll move on to public comment. All right, I have a list of cards here, and the first one I have is William Ulrich. Is William Ulrich? Oh, there he is. Bill? Oh, are you giving your time up?
Yeah, he's going to yield to me.
Okay, because you were at the end of the list,
Hi,
Bob.
Bob Daddy. I read this thing fairly closely, and I did consult with our staff. It appears, I don't want to get the cart before the horse. It appears there are some conditions, and none of those conditions are triggered until they start grading. So,
Yeah.
when you talk about those conditions, you got to set those conditions aside. I have other parking issues. I would hope before you come to a consensus, you go back and read the prior proposal that came before you a number of months ago. And it said a number of things.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what the street width was, they were going to take away parking on one side of the street. What the street width was again, they were going to take away existing. And then we have a condition of 1,000 gallons a minute for fire suppression for 2 full hours. Those are fire department regulations. And so when you get into this, I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of that because that's not what I'm about. I'm about the fact that the inner core of the city doesn't have adequate fire suppression. We've had fires before. We've not been able to put them out in a timely manner. We took 5 units to put out our city clerk's house when that got on fire. We've had a few other ones like the past mayor that didn't get put out. We've had a number of other ones we rolled up and had no water coming out. We are now just in the process of starting to put in some adequate fire lines, and it will take time. So whatever you're going to do, I hope that's the primary consideration for health and safety. When I took a look at the plot plan of the Arbolata style parking, of which I'm kind of a fan, but because it squeezes everything down and people hit the curbs and slow down, again, there's that condition of the width of that street. And I wouldn't think it would be right to have families that live there that have had an improved street for decades all of a sudden lose the parking on one side of the street. They're going to lose enough parking anyhow because of the ingress and the egress of the curb cuts for the driveways. So they're going to lose that amount of parking. And as far as the zoning and the other types of things as to what that particular overlay is, you folks are going to figure out these things. I don't know what the rates are going to be. I would be really interested because we've had a number of people rebuilding houses now due to the Thomas fire, and I'm taking a look at the price per square foot. And when I see a 3,000 square foot house, I'm just kind of wondering what the numbers are.
Right.
And what the lot is, and I'm not for or against, but I would kind of like to know what they think that the actual sales price of the units are going to be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Daddy. Let's see, who do I have next here? Orville Tucker?
Please bear with me, I don't speak very well. I moved into the valley in 1963. We bought a home at 501A North Montgomery Street. In 2013, we moved to 711 Olive Street, across from this proposed building sites. I can tell you, since 1963, at 501 North Montgomery, which is just up my driveway, just by the Church of Christ, there has been a parking problem since 1963 up there. Maybe some people don't see it. But it's been, and it goes all the way up to the hill. It's been there since 63. We've had people block our mailbox, and we're halfway down the block. The problem I have with it is parking. There needs to be some off-street parking up there somewhere, because it seems like all these places are being built. We had a low-income apartments built across the street from our home at 501A. They have 2 parking places per unit, I understand. The street in front of them is parked full of cars, just, and they either have 1 or 2 per site, or per apartment. Well, I am concerned about the parking, and the other thing I'm concerned about is on the original cup for that area up there, was there to be curbs put in and sidewalks at that time as a part of this new building that was going to be added to the Gray Gables? I don't know. If there was, there hasn't been. Okay, I haven't seen anything done up there since 1963. Maybe they're doing some improvements inside, I don't know. I would be surprised if 10% of what they say they were going to do on the original cup has been done, truthfully. I could be wrong, I apologize if I am, but I doubt it. The other thing is, that street right there is already, the people live up on North Signal, they come down Park, I live on the corner of Park Avenue and Olive. They come speeding through there all the time. They drive like fools. I mean, fast. All we're going to do is add to that problem. We're going from an independent living. The place that they have up there right now has so many independent living places there. I assume apartments or so forth. And now, if you look at it, what I read in here, it's going to go fully assisted. Now that tells me that the 44 or 45 kitchenettes that they put in are no longer going to be usable, because those people who are in assisted living are not going to be cooking in their rooms. They're going to be eating in a big, large hall.
Mr. Tucker, your 3 minutes is up, but are you almost done? You want to wrap it up?
Yes, I am.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, and my only thought is, I live there, that street's going to be narrowed down. They just resurfaced that street. Now we're going to go tear it up, put new places in there. My street's going to be narrow, and living on this side, I suspect that no parking is going to be on my side of the street. Personally, I think it's a money grab. Thank you.
Okay. Next, I have Judy Murphy.
Good evening to the planning staff, to the planning commission, and to the staff. My name is Judy Murphy, and I live at 218 Grand Avenue. I've been here since 2004, and I've been through several meetings regarding the Gables. So I'm going to do a quick history on that. In the 60s, the city of Ojai allowed the Gables to build a residential care facility in a residential neighborhood because of the need for independent living units and assisted living units for our seniors. Then in 2001, the Gables requested a CUP for several items, including those 26 additional units, a parking lot, and some interior work. While some of the interior work was completed, not all, the additional 26 units and the parking lot were not. Moving forward to 2014, the Gables requested a CUP to add 7 single-family, upscale, market-priced houses to their property. The proposed houses are roughly 3,000 square feet. Now, in 2019, they would like to zone for 8 houses on minimal lots or undersized lots, requiring variances. Further, this proposal would change, as was just stated, all of the independent living units into assisted living units, which very conveniently reduces their requirement for additional parking spaces on the lot. It also eliminates all of our senior independent living. Ojai's need for senior living quarters has only increased over the years as our housing prices have spiraled upward. As Ojai's population is aging and the baby boomers are now retiring and looking at independent living requirements, the need for this is increasing. I ask you to retain the whole Gables property designated for senior living as intended through the years by our councils, our commissions, and our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Next, I have Bill Miley.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Bill Miley. I have been active in affordable housing issues for the last 6 to 7 years, and my family and I have lived here for the last 51 years. I want to advocate for keeping the senior CUP with a change to regular living apartments for seniors. And below is my thinking. The only thing wrong with this proposal for 8 single residential subdivision units is timing. It would have been better if it was in the 1980s and the 1990s, when housing was reasonably priced, including rental apartments. What Ojai needs today is more rental units which are built to become affordable with covenants to keep them that way for years, in this case for seniors. And senior folks, as many of you know, make up a much higher percentage in this city than any other city in Ventura County. Seniors currently renting are getting squeezed by rising rents and shrinking rent affordable vacancies. Many seniors depend on Social Security, plus maybe some money coming in from a 1% to 2% investment. With a new statewide law capping rental price increases at 5% plus a cost of living, this is going to outpace their income. Senior retirement and savings are now being outpaced, as I just said. It will be a matter of time, just a matter of time, before more and more seniors are going to have to leave the valley, where they've lived for a long time, to find some place that'll match the monthly money they get. This would be considered a high-end subdivision, and I believe that Ojai doesn't need that for its housing needs. Houses are likely to sell between, in my opinion, $1.5 to $2 million. People with $150,000 and higher incomes, that's their market. And there's plenty of houses being sold in Ojai at that price. All you have to do is look at the Ojai Valley News on Friday, and you'll see 30 or so houses that recently have been sold in the last month. There's a need for senior housing. We need reasonably priced rental units, regular rental units for seniors. I know they're asking for a CUP for residential, to change it over, but I hope that they could look at the issue of making regular apartments rather than rather than individual houses. It's also important to keep in mind we have a history here. Dr. Ethel Percy Andrus started this whole thing as Great Gables in 1954, and for teachers because they had no place to go that they could afford. So also the city's general plan housing element calls for meeting a whole bunch of price points. The current zoning, if it was slightly changed to regular apartments that were affordable, would be perfect. So please consider retaining the special emphasis on seniors, make a slight change for regular apartments that would be affordable, and I'm assuming Dr. Andrus would be pleased because she's not far away. She's buried in Ventura. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marley. I'm going to ask one more time. So, Mr. Ulrich, did you just forego and not want to come up at all? No, I just... Or you wanted to swap? Yes. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I still have your card here. Okay, it's your turn then.
Well, there was also that Mr. Daddy got the first card in, I got the second card in, and somehow they got shuffled.
Okay.
So, be that as it may. Good evening, everyone. William Ulrich, 487 Gridley Road. CUP 0024, originally approved in 2001, covering 701 Olive and 701 North Montgomery Street. I'm here tonight representing the residents of France Circle to the north and immediately adjacent to the parcels that are the subject of this concept review 19-001, who include but are not limited to Lauren Howell and Chris Moeller, Andy and Heidi Whitman, Bill and Jill Shanbrom, and others. If you have not already done so, I would urge you to read and absorb the thoughts and emotions contained in the letters from the neighbors on virtually all four sides and adjacent streets regarding their concerns and outright opposition to the proposals before you tonight. Although the applicant, which appears to be a real estate holding company, is entitled to pay their $1,000 to the city and present their concept for your review, you are not obligated to approve said proposal, comment, nor even say nice things about it. Please note that this is not the first time that this owner has submitted this plan or a variation thereof to the departments of the city of Ojai. This plan with minor variations was rejected unanimously by the city council in 2014. The applicant has not to date complied with over 60% of the conditions required by CUP 00-04. Specifically, condition number 10, no more than 142 residents shall reside on the property. As applicant has written, the current 75% occupancy is a reflection of their business model and operating practices, and these practices have failed to deliver the intent of the CUP, which was to increase senior-assisted and independent living housing. Condition number 21, prior to occupancy of any new buildings, a minimum of 57 parking spaces shall be provided on site. Once again, the applicant has failed to comply with the conditions of the existing CUP. Item number 25. Prior to issuance of a grading permit, there seems to be a little bit of confusion about this if you look at the actual language of the CUP. Prior to issuance of a grading permit or building permit, approval for consolidation of the three subject parcels shall be obtained. There's no tentative language here. The intent of council was to effect the consolidation of the three parcels into one. This application exhibits wholesale conflict non-compliance with the Ojai General Plan on several issues, several points. This application exhibits also, further, a wholesale failure to implement the 26 new housing units as approved within the CUP, as have been referenced by previous speakers. What has the applicant been doing for the last 18 years? Right. We urge you to reject this concept review in no uncertain terms. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else, members of the public that would like to speak that haven't had a chance? Oh, here comes a card. Okay. Tom Murphy?
Council members, Planning Commission, and staff, thanks for this opportunity. Let me go with this word that hopefully will stick with this group. It's called transparency. And the reason I use that word, 38 years ago, living in New Jersey, we had a wonderful lot with a nice, beautiful backyard, a swimming pool, the whole bit. And we loved it. And what happened? It went so fast that we could not do anything about the change that did occur, which was a cul-de-sac right in our back, off of our backyard. 5 homes. There goes privacy, everything. So you've heard of Murphy's Law, okay? I'm hoping upon hope that as we proceed in these discussions, that the transparency will be there and we'll have a chance to express, as we are doing tonight, our feelings about how this should or should not proceed. So, when we bought our property, which was 15 years ago on Grand, and again, I thought I had really covered all the bases in terms of nothing is going to happen across the street from me, based on all the legal information that was available. So, it now appears that you've been asked to make many, a total of 24, lot boundary changes to accommodate the Gable project. I do not think that you should provide a zoning change to a non-Ojai resident that will negatively impact the whole city. I've looked at your traffic study and disagree with the estimates of traffic that 7 or 8 new single residents will create. Olive Street is short and quiet and currently, I love it. 7 or 8 new residents feeding out onto a busy Grand Avenue will add to the problems that have already existed in that area. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. All right, I had a couple questions for the applicant. Anybody else interested in further questions for the applicant? Well, you might? Okay, would you mind coming back up? Would any of you like to start first? Okay, all right. So the couple questions that I had were some items that were brought up by public comment. One of them was, do you have an estimated, I know, I'm just saying average cost that one of these lots and units would be sold for?
Well, the applicant's intention is to sell the lots. And I'm hoping maybe to design some of them.
Okay, so you're not planning to
Right.
develop the lot and then sell it?
Yeah,
That's
so I'm not proposing to build all these houses now.
Okay.
And so there's opportunity for everybody in Ojai designers and architects to be involved with
Okay.
this project.
So this is just a concept of what it could look like. You'll be
Yeah,
selling the lots separately, and the
right.
individual lot owner will
I
hire.
showed you
Okay.
that one house plan just as an example of how the lots would fit on this small lot.
Okay.
These are fairly small lots, which there really isn't any available small lots here in Ojai that are vacant small lots here in Ojai. There's a few lots available. There's a 3/4 lot up on Cañada that's on the market for $650,000.
Yeah.
And so because there's no lots available, they're just jacking the prices way up. And so this will really help it'll be a flood in the market, and it'll help, bring the prices down. And I'm thinking that these lots maybe would be $300,000 to $400,000 for the price of these lots.
Yeah, I think maybe my second question then doesn't necessarily apply, because I was going to ask about, potentially you could have built it more dense, but you're not building it. You're just selling the lots.
Yeah, right.
So that kind of takes that
Yeah,
question
I'm
away.
hoping to design some of them.
Okay.
I really would like to. I mean, there really isn't a lot available there's a lot of opportunities for remodeling and things here in Ojai, but there's not a lot of vacant lots available for building on.
Okay,
There's a lot of big vacant lots
Yeah.
that are available.
Right, and then just one other question, because I'm trying to get an understanding of, the history, what was going on there. And I'm not sure if you can answer it or not. Maybe this is something for the owner who's not here. But, apparently they're saying that their occupancy is below 100%.
Yes.
And I was just curious, like, how long this has been going on and how much that is affecting the move to, subdivide the lots and sell them and change the type of living that's there. In other words, take away the non-assisted living? Like, what was going on to trigger all of that?
Well, you want to answer the question?
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Shannon Smith, my
Gives it a
associate.
better understanding of like what's going on there.
So the owner, David Brown, told us that it's pretty much since they have purchased the property, it was in our letter, I think they've only been around 70% capacity.
Okay.
And so there's no need to build 26 more units because there's no one to live in them. They currently have 71 units, and I can't remember the exact number, but those aren't even all full. And some of those could have more than one person in it. So there's plenty of room for more people to live there without building additional units.
And how long has he owned it, Debbie Brown?
2000?
Oh, 2000, okay. Just, all right, Commissioner Lottis, I think you had a question or two.
Okay, just because we were talking about the lots. So what zoning would you be thinking of?
It's currently zoned RO4,
RO.
or is that what?
What is the minimum lot size on RO?
I think 10,000, is that right?
Here we go.
Sorry, the minimum lot size for that zone, I believe, is 12,000 square feet.
12,000, okay.
Okay. Okay, there's one that would need a variance, okay.
As proposed, several of the other lots also require variances for minimum lot width, I believe 3.
Oh.
Right.
Okay.
And that was due to what, the tree?
Yeah.
Partially? At least
mostly-
if I'm correct in the,
It was after 3 meetings with Public Works and the Planning Department. We came to this resolution to make some of the lots bigger and some of them smaller in order to protect the
to
trees.
trees,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes, but you could have fewer lots, right?
Of course.
Okay. Okay, so the zoning would remain RO. Okay.
I have to say the size of the lot, so will affect the market price of the lot as well. Most sales are based on appraisals by the banks, and they would look at the size of the lot and appraise the lot thus, and so.
Okay.
Any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Bobby.
I have a couple.
Yep.
And I'm not sure which one of you would be the best qualified to answer this, but it's always been my assumption, and I could be wrong because I don't have any data about this, that the residential units at the Gables are basically high-end senior living.
Not true.
I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you define high-end senior living. Are you talking about prices, average prices of rent?
Well, I don't know how they buy in or what it costs or what the monthly cost is, and I wonder if that's affecting the vacancy in your units, if that the units are too expensive.
I'm not sure. The census goes up and down. It's, sometimes it can go up to, say, 85%. Sometimes it goes down to 70%. It really
But
depends on a lot of
what
factors.
is the buy-in and what are the...
There is no buy-in.
There's no buy-in.
The average rent, the rents are very different for each unit. I'd say the average rent is approximately $4,000 per month.
So that's more high-end.
That's high-end for a senior.
Well, can I just add something to that? There's a lot of retirement communities have a buy-in of 10,000 or more.
Right.
Yes,
We
I
don't
know
have a
that.
buy-in as such.
Right, I know that. So I guess I understand, you'd like to sell 12 lots because that's the best money generator and probably the easiest to understand and the greatest potential for somebody to actually buy that. I don't know that that's exactly what Ojai needs right now. And I wonder if anybody has thought about proposing to find a developer who does specialize in affordable housing projects, and there are some good ones out there, to see if they could put some decent affordable units with some for seniors, some for other people.
Workforce.
And rather than having houses all along, which is what we always see here, is a house, a house, a house, a house, a house. Compact these. I mean, we've seen beautiful projects, I'm sure you have, Mark, for housing at planning conferences where they look like single-family houses and there are many units in them, and then that allows for some open space. And I think that the bigger the house, the more cars each one's going to have, is what seems to follow. And so at this point in time, and maybe this project would have been great at a different time, but right now, that doesn't seem to me to be what Ojai needs. And again, it's another one of these questions as to how does Ojai want to define itself? And it goes back to the vision of what we want for our town.
I did make that proposal to the client, my client, and he's very stern that he thinks this subdivision is a perfect match for the neighborhood, that a high-density housing project would not blend in to that neighborhood.
26 units as
Right.
approved.
I know, it would be much easier. I told him, hey, we could avoid all this by doing the 26 units, but he feels, like, hey, that's not right for this neighborhood, and these single-family
Well,
homes.
not 26 3,000 square foot units,
No, no, I
but
know.
26 small
Smaller
units
units.
Yeah, I know.
that
Well, you could,
have a whole different profile.
we could propose that again, but I don't know if the neighborhood would go for that. Would they really want to see 26 apartments there instead of the single-family homes? It doesn't. It seems like that's not a very good match for the neighborhood.
There's already how many people there? I mean, I live around the corner, and I don't really see very many people out there ever. It's pretty quiet over there, I think, with a lot of people living there, whereas a different kind of housing project will have much more impact with much fewer people. So I think really it depends on what's in there as to how it impacts the neighborhood. And you can't just say 26 is going to impact more than 8. It depends on who's there. A 3,000 square foot house isn't going to have 8 people in it.
Right.
I mean, one person in it, so it's not going to be like there's 8 people living there. Those are big houses.
It is our feeling that there's a really big need for new units for families, for new families who
But these are going to be very expensive, rich families.
I don't think it's very expensive. I would say
It's all relative, yeah.
they're in the upper middle expense wise, and so they're not going to be that expensive. They're not going to be this for the exorbitant rich. But
Everything's relative.
my presentation talked about.
We're not supposed to.
Beautiful project there with nice houses.
Right.
That's not the issue. I'm just saying that I don't necessarily think that actually really meets the need of what we could use here in Ojai right now.
Okay,
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I know that there is a terrible affordability index, and so affordable housing, would help that, but also market rate housing with upper income earners will help that affordability index as well.
Okay,
And providing work for the construction of these homes to the construction workers, that'll trickle down to help out the affordability index.
I think you would
as well.
need more than 8 to make a difference in the housing price.
okay. All right, any more questions for the applicant? All right, I'm going to do one last call. If there's any other anyone from the audience who has a comment? Okay, I'm going to close the, one last call.
I do have a comment.
You need to come up to the podium, sir, please. Thanks.
Thank you again for allowing me to speak again. I don't feel that he's all wrong about his comment about the homes that are gonna go in there. The
Right.
price of them, if there's lots are gonna sell for 400,000, 350,000, those houses are gonna be they're gonna be $1.5 million, maybe more. But if my feeling is I wouldn't mind, like I say, I live directly across the street there. I own the lot that's right next to, across the street from there. I would much rather see the senior housing go in there as it was originally proposed. I think that my opinion, the $4,000, I would be surprised if there's 10 people in Gray Gables that's paying $10,000. $4,000 per month. I'd say I would feel it would probably be more than that. I think it's more higher end than $4,000 a month. But I would rather see homes go in there for senior citizens. Second to that, I would rather see their proposal go in for the homes with some adjustments in for the parking, for the Gray Gables, done on some other piece of property or done on the first lot down here on the corner, for parking, for off-street parking, for the people that work at the Gray Gables. The other thing is the street, narrowing the street down, I'm not for that. I live there, and we have a nice wide street. Hundreds of people walk past my house every day with their dogs. And I know that because I pick up their, but anyway, I feel that I would rather see that proposal come through than to put 26 separate houses for other people.
I'm not saying that the 26 would be separate houses.
Yeah, I'm for the senior. Personally, I'd rather see the senior citizens get in there and have those places at a lower rate.
Right.
But some people they don't want to do that. So that's how I feel. Thank you very much for
Sure.
listening.
No, thank you. All right, so we're going to close the public comments and hearing, and we're going to talk and discuss among ourselves. Fellow commissioners?
Can I just ask one more question of staff?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So I guess, there's talk about the street narrowing, and I guess in reading the staff report, I didn't
missed that
focus on
too.
that, I missed it. So could you talk more about what's happening with the existing street width versus what's being proposed in the concept review?
So there might be a couple of parts to that because so condition 24 in the existing CUP, the 2001 CUP, notes that the Public Works Department required. So these are the current requirements under the existing CUP. The applicant to provide curbs, gutters, and sidewalks on Montgomery Street from Grand Avenue to Buena Vista, sidewalks on Grand Avenue from North Montgomery Street west to Olive Street, curbs, gutters, and sidewalks on Olive Street north to the proposed parking lot, a pave-out of 3 feet on Olive Street and Montgomery Street with the new curbs and gutters, and then also some additional requirements like protecting the pepper trees and things like that. So those conditions are the current existing conditions.
Tied to the issuance of a grading permit.
Mm-hmm. Now, recently, what's noted in the staff report is since that CUP, when the applicant came to the city to discuss this project, that Public Works met with the applicant and asked that all gaps in curb, sidewalk, and street trees be infilled at the frontages, that lot one of the proposed lot layout adds the city's Tico Avenue 50-foot wide right-of-way into the size of the private lot and doesn't support vacating the city right-of-way. And then requested a dedication of a 10-foot wide strip of land on the Tico Avenue right-of-way. There's some additional requirements, but so that's what's discussed at this time. Anything else?
I would
Do we know
add.
what's the width of the existing street? I mean, we don't have to be specific, but is it?
While we're looking that number up, let me add an additional point, which is, as presently proposed by Whitman and Co., and of course not yet fully reviewed because this is a concept review.
Right.
They are proposing, as shown in attachment B, page 1, which is the site plan up on the screen, a portion of the frontage does extend into the current street. It's not dimensioned in that plan, so I don't know exactly how wide. And that's one of the key questions we have if there's, the applicant moves this forward, is what exactly are you proposing to narrow the street? How much are you proposing to narrow it?
Okay.
And what's the basis for which you're requesting the council to vacate that area?
Okay.
Then one other point is on page 6 of 10 at the bottom of the page. The Olive Street improvements notes that a 40-foot wide dedicated road with curb extension that narrows through the street to 24 feet at the western and eastern frontage of the corner of Olive Street at Park Avenue.
Oh, it is dimensioned. And I confess, it is, portions of it are dimensioned on the site plan, illegible on the screen, but legible in the packet. The narrowest width they're proposing is at the corners with Park and Olive with curb extensions of 20 feet wide. And the widest they're proposing is 36 feet. And I believe I think it might currently be 40. So they're proposing a significant narrowing, which would require several levels of city review.
Right.
That's a good point.
Yeah, thank you.
Just to point something out in regards to that narrowing, the property lines are actually behind that part that's coming into the street. What they're doing is, if you look, it's the meandering of the sidewalk, so it's not a straight sidewalk.
Right.
So that'd be something that we could easily look at and say, this makes no sense. We don't want to make the street narrower. Straighten up the sidewalk. It just won't be as pretty. And there you go.
And that would just come down the road with a condition
Yeah, that would be
that
at the
whatever they're
point.
doing is going to get approved by Public Works and,
Yeah, this would all be, if
Yeah,
this ever did go forward and they came forward with a
Right.
tentative tract map, then we would cover all of that at that point. And we could actually, at that point, you could then condition those improvements happening before anything else.
right,
Unlike what's kind of happened now, as it was after the fact.
okay.
Agreed. And just to amplify that point, if this goes forward, one of the keys, as we've heard tonight, the proposal is to subdivide and then sell off. We'll
Right.
want to make sure that any conditions that are structured to take into account what should be tied to the first building permit for a house, what should be tied to the 8th building permit or 7th or whatever number is picked, and what should be tied to the tentative tract map, so that we ensure that things like sidewalks and curbs and gutters are built before any subdivision is completed. One of the goals, as we've had 18 years of development and planning, we should take
Right.
advantage of that and structure the conditions appropriately.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a good catch.
I just wanted to write that down, so sorry for the delay there. So I'm wondering if we should just go commissioner by commissioner at this point, since our discussion seems to be slowing down a bit here, and get input. Would you like to start, Commissioner Powers?
Sure. I don't have any questions or thoughts on data. And it's a tricky thing for me, because I know Mark really well, and I know David, and I the only person I don't know is a landowner. And we've had other projects come before us where the owners of the property aren't present, which puts me in a position of feeling somewhat ineffective, because we've already asked some questions they don't have the answers for.
Right.
And it's like, then why are we doing this now? It's So really, anything I have to say is a personal editorial on philosophy about Ojai and the vision of Ojai. So that's what I can speak on and feel that I can be somewhat articulate about. This whole plan seems somewhat business as usual, and I agree with some of the community members that, 20 years ago, this might have been a very viable plan, or more than 20 years ago. It might have been a viable plan to subdivide in this way. But the way I look at it now, there's no vision here. There's no vision of the future. With everything our community's been through, with the Thomas Fire, with RENA numbers needed, with affordable housing missing, with long waiting lists for people to get into Whispering Oaks for senior housing. It brings up the conversation of, well, there's landowners' rights, and then there's what's the vision of the community and the general plan update, which we've only scratched the surface of what the future of Ojai is going to look like. I agree with Mark that, we need younger families here. On the other hand, a 3,000 square foot house in this day and age is counter to everything the city has signed on to regarding climate change emergency and clean air and everything that the council and leadership has been speaking about. This kind of development, whether they're green homes or not, is somewhat counter to all the conversations that I hear going on regarding land use and building and I really wish the landowner were here to understand well, I'm going to take that word back. I don't think this person would understand. Otherwise, this wouldn't have come forward. I'm not even this sure that Mr. Brown, and I don't know Mr. Brown, so I have nothing against him, but I'm not even sure he would be, if he were here, if he were able to listen to the residents and somewhat understand. Matthew, what am I doing incorrectly?
Incorrect isn't the right word, but I would caution you and every other commissioner and the members of the public to bear in mind that the heart of our conversation has to be the land use code, the general plan, the zoning code, and governing state laws, and a little less about the individual personalities.
Got it.
I'll also add that the property owner was invited to be here tonight. They received the notice, and of course, Mr. Whitman would have let them know personally as well. We have no power to compel their attendance.
Yes.
But we do remind, and I fully agree, that attending is important because then they can understand and see the community's comments and the commissioner's comments. But we do lack the power to compel them to be present, and we can't hold that against them as well. Thank you.
And I don't, and I appreciate your guidance. I guess what I want to say is there was a CUP. It's been a long-standing CUP. There was neglect in following through on that, and now there wants to be a course change, and I'm not so in agreement with that whatsoever, given where we are in the here and now of our community.
Okay. Commissioner Lottis?
Okay. So just one minor point. I still am not sure about that requirement for the combination of 3 parcels. It does say grading or building permit, and so it seems ambiguous at best.
Yeah, and
at least.
I was actually going to comment on that as well and say it is ambiguous. So I think it is fair to read that. I've heard a couple different readings of it. The answer to your question from earlier, and I realize because it is ambiguous, no building permits for new buildings have been issued under the CUP, but building permits related to the kitchenettes have been issued. So you could read that.
Okay.
You could read that either way, and that's a fair interpretation.
Okay. So I even question how many parcels we're really talking about them that it would be available to them. Matthew, yes.
Yeah, I was just say, there's been some past confusion, we'll say. As I understand it, there are 3 assessor's parcel numbers across this whole pile,
Right.
and there are 12 individual lots. This is a
Oh.
situation where the assessor's parcel numbers and the legal separate lots do not match.
Oh, okay.
Ideally, in a good world, assessor's parcel numbers, you get 1 parcel number per legal lot, but that's not always the case.
Okay.
And one of the goals is no matter what happens with whether they move forward with this or something else, we rationalize the land. And as noted by Mr. Whitman, there were 12 separate legal lots, certificates of compliance issued in
That's
2009,
true, right.
confirming by the city that those 12 legal lots do exist.
So if 3 were combined, that would result in 9?
3 would be 9, yes.
Okay.
Although, as I understand it, these 3 APNs listed in condition number 25 cover all 12 lots. But you could rejigger it as appropriate.
Okay, all right, I'll just set that aside. So there is not total clarification on
Right.
how many lots
Could ultimately.
are rightfully available, or we do know, we're 12.
There's the city's
12,
past position, as stated in the 2009 documents, is there's 12 legal lots,
okay,
each of which is zoned either R2 or R01.
okay, all right. Okay, so just moving on from that. Yeah, everything that Ray said, I feel a lot of simpatico with that, in that it's not very visionary, it's kind of the same old, but kind of going along with what we're being presented with tonight and just giving feedback for that. Yes, I have concerns about the area to be vacated. I have concerns about Hammerhead, end of the street. I have concerns about the street narrowing. I have concerns about any variances whatsoever. And I am concerned about the loss of street parking. I definitely would prefer to see something where there was affordable housing. Some cities do require 25% inclusionary housing, affordable housing. We don't even have that being offered.
Right.
I think also, just to talk about the rest of the property with the gables, at a minimum, there should be addressing of the problem with not allowing employee parking on site. That's really an issue. So let's see, do I have anything else here? Yeah, I think that's basically what if things come in, I would rather have it be more visionary, both in terms of land use, the layout. But if they're allowed to do something like this, then those are my concerns that I mentioned. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Corbin?
Okay. So there are 12 lots, but there aren't that many assessors' parcel numbers. Does that affect how the lots are sold, or are they just separate? In other words, I think one thing that concerns me, well, there are many things that concern me about the project as designed, but what I'm concerned about is what I've just heard, which is that the lots will be sold individually. So there will be no unity in terms of how they're developed. There'll just be 12 random things going on. And I wonder if there's any recourse in terms of how many assessors' parcels numbers as to whether it has to be sold as a unit or can be sold individually. That's one question.
I can answer that. So the assessor's parcel numbers isn't the tie to accomplish that goal. Instead, it's the city's base police power. City can, as part of approval of a tentative tract map for an 8 or 6 or 7 unit subdivision, impose design standards on those. I think the proposal from the applicant is he's not a builder. He wants to get the lots subdivided, get them subdivided and thus entitled to one house per lot, then sell them, and the builders will build what they build. But the city could impose a set of conditions requiring design guidelines at a high level or at some more specific set of levels to force a unity of look and a unity of design. The city could also impose an HOA requirement on the 8 to ensure that any common infrastructure is maintained. In the assessment parcel numbers aren't the tool to do that. The tool is simply the tentative tract map.
Okay.
The assessment parcel numbers is a taxation tool.
Okay. And then regarding a variance, it seems that you need a better cause to give one of those than we've heard. I would maybe like to take a different look at this. This project, the Gables, in some regards seems to be an historical property. It was kind of a landmark project when it was built, and maybe that's the way we should look at this, and we should take that in mind when we look at the development of this piece of land as something that should be as visionary as the Gables was when it was conceived and built, and that pertains to land use, so we could look at it in that way.
Good. Well, I can concur and agree with my fellow commissioners that there's a lack of a vision. I mean, it sounds like basically we're selling off lots and changing the somewhat the use on the existing one, catering to just assisted living and and getting rid of the non-assisted, which would then create a bigger housing need for seniors. So that's a consideration and a concern. I'm also concerned about the parking issue, the potential parking on the street application, and definitely the lack of employee parking. Once again, I don't know that I have to repeat it. I concur with my fellow commissioners, and I think I don't need to say much more than that. I guess I would suggest going back and revisiting this project and looking at some of the concerns brought up by members of the public, and then, of course, the comments here by the Planning Commission. And my second choice, if the 12 lots were going to be developed, I would definitely down the road make sure that it was conditioned and there would be design guidelines, as Mr. Summers suggested. And then also that certain items would be tied to the tract map and possibly other items that would be tied to the individual lots. So I have no problem with the architecture, Mark. I love it. But I don't know that you would be designing all of them. But, in the green buildings, of course, but that's a big if and not really part of, what we're looking at tonight. But I think that's kind of wraps it up. I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like, well, yeah, single-family homes would not, I wonder, should require design reviews and part of tract map.
Well, if they're single, and if it's a tract map, I think we might if it's a
We might.
subdivision. And I meant to ask that earlier and I forgot.
Yeah.
We'll have to ask about it. We'll take a minute and let everyone exit. Okay, we're going to continue our meeting. We're going to ask everyone they can take out their conversation outside the lobby. That's all right. Just letting you know. Thank you. All right, so we're going to go to item number 3. This is our informational items, and we're going to go to the director's decisions. Any questions for staff on the director's decisions?
Sorry.
I knew you didn't hear me. So the question, here it is. Do you have any questions
I was so.
I know.
The meeting ended so
on the
fast.
director decisions?
We got to the point.
We did, we got to the point. Okay,
Okay.
we have our usual oak trees, which are the predominant issues on here. Do you have a question?
I wasn't done with that previous conversation. and you
Oh.
didn't go back around.
Oh, you wanted to, oh, I'm sorry, you should have stopped me. Oh, you should have said Commissioner Nolan, I would definitely have stopped.
You had your foot on the pedal.
Oh, okay. I kind of looked left and right, I apologize. Well.
Well, that's what we were, I was just sharing with
Okay,
Commissioner
so
Waters.
now we're on item number 3, the
Yes.
director decisions.
Oh,
And
director
do we have any questions of staff?
Nope, just one more, we've got, out of the 4 decisions, we
The
have
trees, yeah.
3 on trees. And the pruning is probably fine, as long as it's a good arborist and good trimmer. We've got
Are there
remo-
checks and balances for that?
No,
Of
no.
which arborists? And
No. No, and in fact, at a minimum, I've said this before, but I would certainly hope that we can work toward addressing the tree ordinance,
Right,
fixing the gaps that exist, and institute new procedures like require all arborist reports to be reviewed, peer-reviewed. That's, peer-reviewed. Yeah, but you know, a lot of times where there's issues like that in other cities, for example, where there's a geology reports come in, they're done by a licensed geologist, but then they get reviewed by a city-appointed geologist. They get a peer review so that you have an expert looking at what should be expert. And I personally would like to see that system instituted for Ojai. And I may be the only one out there saying this, but I do.
So I'm sorry to change the subject, and I got distracted, but if the conversation for that last item wasn't over, we could try to grab people and get them back in. I wasn't clear if that was
would you prefer, I don't mind doing
I
that.
just had a little caveat. We don't have to grab anyone. It was just,
A more internal between
yeah.
us.
All I
We
was,
could- Yeah, go ahead.
do you have to do something official?
Might not be able to- might not really be able to discuss.
Can we do it after we've done it? Although it's just a concept, we didn't vote on it.
Yeah, and I was thinking we could have reopened it, and I see the crowd of people, so I was thinking.
It's not even a discussion. It's just a comment I had.
Okay, does that
And I
Does
don't
that
even
seem
need to make
appropriate?
it. I can share it with you.
afterwards?
Sure.
Okay.
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 Um,
With my thought was with the applicant, requesting the concept review, if there's additional feedback, I guess the other thing, if you want to provide them that feedback too.
Oh, yeah, you could do that, okay.
So maybe in the priority issues for 2020, you could discuss the vision for the town, which would help us make decisions like this as to whether something's appropriate or not. And we've said this I'm sick of hearing myself say it.
Updated general plan and updated
It's the updated
visioning
general-
was
yes.
so
It's
helpful.
really important, because if that's not part of the vision for how the town moves forward,
Right.
then that gives us tools to work with.
Yes.
If it is the vision, if we just want to build more expensive houses and have it be that kind of a town, great.
We
Then
just need to know it.
then we just need to know. If the city really wants affordable housing, we need to go out and get it. If it doesn't, great, then we know what to do.
Exactly.
But we need that. We need that, because otherwise we're just flopping in the breeze and making comments that,
We're relying on a dated, the general plan, because I went and looked at different things in the general plan,
and we need
it's not far enough ahead now.
Right.
and we
It's at
need
the end of
better
the cycle.
data, because do we need more senior housing? My gut says yes, but I'm not basing that on anything scientific. Do we need more reasonably priced senior housing? I'm positive that's probably true. I mean, all of these things require information that we can make informed decisions about, so we can do an educated job.
Yep, and I had a meeting this week with the general plan. One of the people we're working on negotiating for a general plan update with, and as part of those discussions, we talked about different visioning and workshop options. So my goal is within the next month that we'll actually have the contract done for the general plan update, and then we'll have the kickoff, which will lead to all of the visionings and the workshops.
Right.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. I agree. Thank you, Commissioner Corbin, for bringing that up. And then getting back
So
to,
back to
yeah,
the
trees.
Yeah, I mean, I am a champion of peer review. I think that when you have the experts looking at what's coming in that's supposed to be expert, it's just a good, it's a
Yeah.
good, it's reassuring, and it's, would feel a lot more confident in whether a tree should really be removed or not.
I will say that the trees that are on the public right-of-way or in the public parks, the city-owned property, typically those reports go to the tree committee, and they get reviewed. But that's not for private residences.
Yeah.
Like, I see Catherine's.
And the other point too, quickly, just 601 Pleasant, which I think is the one we're talking about, they did not get permission to remove that tree. We issued an advisory letter.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is, they applied, but they didn't receive
They
it?
requested to remove the tree.
I see it
We
says
issued an
advisory.
Oh,
letter.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And who made how did you make the determination?
I made the determination at that time. I was acting community development director still, and
Okay.
I made the determination. The report stated that the tree was in poor health but not dead, and it didn't get there. There's a scale of where they grade it, and then
Right.
the explanation for why it needed to be removed. I thought what we ended up advising was, submit an application to prune it versus removing it. So.
I'll just make another comment. Well, because I am a member of the tree committee, and I'll be saying my comments as a member of that body. We have in the past discussed tightening up requirements for, even though you're a certified arborist, but when you're doing the report, a lot of times it'll just say hazardous or hollow or what have you. But they can provide more information. And oftentimes, sometimes you have to go and have a test done. You need to do,
Yeah. Yeah.
you need to do a bore. You need to turn in samples and get them tested to see if it's a certain pathogen.
Yeah.
And yes, sometimes it's one more step, but it's a filter so that you can really determine if it's something you can't visibly see, because you can't always visibly see it, then that would be required. And I know other communities oftentimes have a recommended list for arborists.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, the ISA website. But I know the county, I don't know if they still do, but they used to have it. And I know in Santa Barbara, they did the same thing. Yeah, it would have to be adopted, exactly.
Yeah,
But-
we requested we gave them the option to provide additional information
Right.
based on our determination, and then there was a little bit of additional information. It still didn't satisfy us, so
Right.
we just issued an advisory letter on that. So there were no removals this
And
month.
Well,
there's go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate staff being
Right.
careful
Thank you.
and really considering these requests.
Yeah.
I
Right.
Definitely.
There's another good reason for having that filter and additional information. Number one, you can help, determine what needs to be done to the tree. Do you leave the tree? Do you prune it? Do you treat it? Do you take it out? But the second thing is, if you know what caused the problem, then you can decide, well, gee, should we plant another tree there? And/or we know not to plant a certain species because we know it's, say, susceptible to such and such, or we know there's something in the soil there, so the soil needs to get remediated. So it gives you that information also. So now you're ensuring the success of the replacement if that happens to be what's going on there. So, and I agree with Commissioner Lottis that I think that needs to be at one of the top of our list
Yeah.
for many different reasons, so. I guess what we can do now is let's move on to item number 4.
Do we have an interim development director? Is there an interim community development director? Is that what Catherine?
It's still officially me, but we have
Yeah.
we have a couple of things happening as we speak, so we'll be making that change soon.
Thank you for the update.
Okay, so the next, number 4 is the future agenda items. And staff maybe
Yeah, I can
go over that with us.
Yeah, so on October 16th, we'll continue the Title 10 cleanup discussion. We didn't include it today because we actually thought that we thought that the concept review would actually go longer than it did.
I did too.
So
Initially.
so we don't want to start that at 9 p.m. But
Yeah.
so we'll also bring the 318 Bryant Street, the self-storage project. My understanding of that, I think it is the one we've talked about before, where at some point they had talked about doing affordable housing as a part of the project, and now they are submitting. I don't know all the details, but that apparently didn't move forward, so they're submitting to do additional storage instead. So we'll bring that,
There's
and then
another lot there.
yeah. And then Tree City USA is the item that was requested at the last meeting, which was to come back with the report on the requirements to become a Tree City again, which I had assumed we already were because there's a sign on the city limit
We were
sign.
at one time.
Tree
We
City.
actually were, yeah.
But so we're going to bring the report back, and I think all of us are on board, like we talked about at the last meeting, with getting that that title back. So we'll bring those back on the 16th. There's a couple other projects pending listed on that future list, but nothing currently scheduled, hard scheduled for the 6th. I do anticipate, I think the Title 10 cleanup will be kind of an ongoing discussion item over the next couple of meetings. So that's what we
Okay.
have for now.
Good.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
Of Mr. Summers?
Of course.
And this may be a non sequitur or not even applicable for a meeting. I haven't heard more discussion on 5G and where that's going, and people on the street are asking me every week what's happening with 5G, and I know you were pursuing some avenues and looking at what other cities were doing, and I know the FCC just brought down something a couple weeks ago.
I can give a 2-minute, not on the agenda, of course, but I'll give you a 2-minute statement
Oh, good. I'd like to hear that.
for the benefit of you and the public who are here. One is 5G is a marketing term. It's not actually a technical standard, nor is it a regulatory standard. Instead, there are 3 regulatory standards that the city has in our existing wireless regulations. One is full-scale new facilities, for which we have a robust requirement for planning commission approval, conditional use permit, stringent requirements for stealth, stringent requirements on location. Second category is what's called minor modifications. Minor, I put in quotes because the feds have defined it pretty broadly. That's for existing wireless towers being modified within certain size limits. Those get a streamlined process under federal law. We have a requirement in our ordinance for those to be approved, reviewed and approved by the director with a robust application to ensure that they fit within the narrow limits of federal law. And then third, what I think has generated much of the recent controversy and concern are so-called small cells.
Right.
Again, it's a federal misnomer. Small is not exactly small. Those are baked into a FCC order that came down last year, and we set up a set of robust regulations for those in a resolution adopted by the City Council that requires, again, director review and approval and fitting into the narrow box. And I'll note on that one, for small cells, we have the strongest set of rules in the state, us and Mill Valley.
Oh, yeah.
Up in Marin County. The reason being that in Ojai and in Mill Valley, small cell sites are prohibited in residential zones and in the rights of way adjacent to residential zones. So they're barred being near your house. They are allowed in commercial zones and in PL zones and other zones with significant rules and regulations. We lack the power to ban them entirely because federal law has banned that. As is perhaps obvious, wireless carriers have better lobbyists than cities. But what we have done, what the council has done, is adopt the most stringent regulations in the state, us and Mill Valley. And those are currently legal, The carriers are pursuing a change to that, and that change is through a recent FCC proceeding that was just opened. The League of Cities is submitting comments on behalf of all the state cities opposing that petition to further loosen regulatory requirements by preempting city power. The comment deadline for that, I think, is October 29th. And the city is looking at submitting additional city comments on top of the league's comments opposing that petition. For small cells, that's the regulatory term. It's intended to facilitate the, quote, 5G marketing term.
Mm-hmm.
And the basis for small cells is they're more sites, but they're littler. Instead of a whole big fake pine tree with antennas in 3 directions and 20, 40 cubic feet of antennas, the idea for small cells is on top of individual light standards or on top of individual telephone poles. A littler thing that covers 500, 1,000, 1,500 feet, not a whole several miles in one tower, but more of them. The idea being, and this is the idea from the carriers that's been baked into federal regulations, more smaller facilities allows a lesser aesthetic impact from a grand perspective and enables the carriers to have more data throughput, reflecting the fact that a lot of, 5 things in my hands here that have cell tower connections. The data throughput has been the driving concern for carriers. Most of the country that needs coverage is covered. You can make a phone call anywhere that you need to make a phone call, with some exceptions. Not everywhere has adequate coverage for the data needs that the carriers have experienced. That's what they've been pushing for, and the idea with small cells is to generate more coverage for data through having greater saturation in areas. I realize that all of those words are very concerning to a significant portion of the public who have this deep concern about radio frequency emissions and what that does. And I understand and respect that concern. And my comment to that is that the city as a government has been preempted by federal law from regulating wireless facility and radio frequency emissions. Instead, I would suggest take that concern, which is a valid, real concern, and go to Congress. Go to your member of Congress and say, this needs to be changed. Because the city can only do what we are allowed to do. Right. And what we are allowed to do is to set stringent location requirements and stringent aesthetic requirements, meaning the look of the facilities. And we have done that. We have a requirement, everything new be stealth, and we have a requirement that prohibits small cells in residential zones, along with Mill Valley, the strongest in the state. But we don't have, and we do have an RF emissions rule, which is that you have to prove and demonstrate, you have to state compliance with federal standards. But we can't go farther and say ban everything because federal law prohibits that. So if that's a concern, the remedy is go to Congress and get us more power. That's my 5-minute update.
But can the city prohibit them from attaching to public light poles and
unfortunately, also, no. We can regulate their attachment. But the reason is that state law, Public Utilities Code Section 7901, grants to telephone and telegraph corporations, the statute's that old, the right of access to the entire public rights of way. So our ability to prevent them from attaching to our poles in the public right of way has been preempted. But there is a but. The but is that Public Utilities Code Section 7901.1 allows the city to adopt reasonable time, place, and manner regulations on that attachment. That's where our ability is to say, well, you, the carriers, are the ones who have CPC certification, that is, as a telephone carrier, which is most of them, have the right to attach to our telephone poles and our light standards. But we can regulate how you do that, and we can regulate where you do that, and that's where our power comes back in. Mm-hmm. And again, there the remedy is Sacramento.
Right.
I was going to mention when we went over our last session with Title 10, one of the items at the end was the location or where they were allowed the zoning. And I don't know, is that presently meeting the requirements that you just said? Our code is up to date on that?
Yeah, our position is that we have a strong code right now.
I was going to bring it up next time. Did we need to go back and revisit it? And you may have already answered my question,
Yeah, I don't think at this time we need to revisit the wireless rules, but we're monitoring the constantly shifting federal and state legal ground, and as that shifts, then we may need to make some changes.
Okay, and then at the same time looking at the zoning of where it's allowed.
Exactly. And
yeah.
Exactly. And the last point I'll add on that is that There are challenges to the FCC order about small cells pending in a couple of courts.
I know.
Nobody's won yet.
Yeah.
If somebody wins, then we'll look at it.
Okay, good, yeah.
But at the moment, the city has decided to benefit from the challenges brought by others, but not to participate directly in those challenges.
Okay.
And the main one is pending in the Ninth Circuit. It's brought by 5 or 6 states and some 40 cities. So it's a well fought challenge with the right people fighting it. If they win, we'll benefit.
Okay. Any other questions on upcoming agendas? Future Planning Commission hearing items? No. Ray? Nope, you're good? Bobby? You're good? Any further questions on the tentative agenda? Okay, good. Then we're going to go to item 5, and that's the Planning Commission liaison schedule for 2019. And it looks like I'm the next one next week. Now that I'm looking at this, I better take this home with me
Yeah.
if I don't have it written down already. All right. So we don't have any questions. Everybody's good with what we've got there. And then I think our last item is the reports. So Commissioner Lottis, would you like to give us the city council?
Okay, yes, so I was not good about putting this on my calendar, so I forgot to go.
But you
And I
could
know-
always watch it, yeah.
I know Commissioner
Forgot to
Corbin
go,
was there.
that's
I
right.
forgot to go.
Okay.
I'm very sorry, yes. I know. So just briefly, let's see. Councilmember, oh my God, I can't think of her name. Who's that? What's her last name? Francina, Councilmember Francina talked about the bike train to the schools, which sounded good, but also on October 6th, the critical mass bike ride through downtown Ojai. The only thing I didn't get was what time that might be.
I think it's an afternoon.
5:30?
I think it's something like 2 or 3:30, and then it's supposed to, yeah, it's an afternoon.
Afternoon,
event.
okay.
James is looking it up.
Okay, good. So,
I wrote
let's
it down, but I didn't
see.
bring my.
Yeah, I'd be interested in joining up with that.
Yeah.
And let's see, on the consent calendar, the city is writing a letter to the county BOS and Ag Commission on advance notification for the Asian citrusillid spraying. And they ended up deciding on a 2-week delay to allow additional work on the letter that was going to go out. And so a couple of the council members would work with staff on that. There's also another consent calendar item, SB 13. It was mentioned, it's, I think Councilmember Wyrick asked for the city to take a neutral position on this because there were some things in this bill, SB 13. It prohibits new connection fees on affordable housing, I think. With housing?
Accessory.
Thank you,
yeah,
ADUs,
accessory
that's
dwelling.
what it was, yeah. But that it also does call out ADUs being allowed to count toward the RENA numbers. So I thought that was a positive. Okay, public comments, there was a discussion item on Creek Road. And the city staff is also writing a letter on that. But they decided to put some additional thought and work time into that, and they're coming back with that letter on Creek Road in 2 weeks. And the concerns are about truck traffic, speeding, the speed limits, illegal passing, and they want some additional detail on a stop sign at that real sharp curve.
Right, the big discussion item was that because of the speed limit and the lack of any stop signs, that it's now like the route that is on all your apps because it's the fastest route, and so it's increased the traffic. So they wanted to put some stop signs to decrease that, and make it look to the algorithm less attractive,
Right.
so that they'll get, and also talked about having the inn, this is a big one, having their delivery trucks come up on Creek Road too.
Apparently, that's happening quite a bit.
Yes.
I think they did give direction to staff to go ahead and put in the one-stop sign at, we're right there where the entrance to the Bentley Ranch is, whatever it is, whatever it's called.
They give us direction to come back with that, but the one thing that they directed to do at that meeting was install the radar feedback sign
Okay.
down at Ventura and Montgomery, because everybody kind of just starts rolling down the hill. So, and loses track of speed. So we're going to put the radar sign that I think is currently on Kenyatta. We're going to move it over
Right, I saw it
here.
on
So,
Kenyatta.
and we are bringing it back at the next council meeting with the additional items you mentioned.
Okay, then we have, 2 PM, the critical
thought it was
mass bike ride
Where does it
through downtown,
Oku.
2 PM, starts at Boku.
Oh, 2 p.m. There you go.
Cool.
And they're gonna ride on Ojai Avenue.
I have it starting on Vaughn.
They closing the
Oh, maybe they changed it.
Oh, start at Vaughn's.
getting closed?
I heard it was starting at Boku, because you could park in the park and ride there, if just somebody needed parking.
Oh,
But-
yeah,
But
yeah.
it may have changed that,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep, that's a worthwhile event. And, okay, then the highlight of the evening, fences, walls, and hedges. So at the July 9th meeting, council had directed staff to work on only 3 changes, so that was discussed. It was eliminate the 5-foot setback, fences and walls less than 3 feet. Did I have that right? It was, that's one of the options. Eliminate the 5-foot setback.
Yes, that's one.
Right.
So you could have fences and walls coming into the 5-foot, that first 5 feet, that would be 3 feet or less.
3 feet or less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second item was to establish the minimal low-fee process so that every fence and wall gets reviewed by staff here at City Hall in some fashion. And the third was to address the safety issues. So, and staff added another clarification, which is dear to my heart, chain link fencing prohibition. So, that was funny, that was not discussed at all.
We talked about it. I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
We are bringing everything back. You're getting
Yeah.
to it,
We'll
but
get to
so we'll
review
include
it.
Yeah, so
that.
the item was to continue with council input and revisions and ask staff to come back as time allows.
Mhm.
They were
So-
inclined to increase it from 3 to 4 feet.
Mhm.
Yes, and Commissioner Corbin kind of talked about the advantage of maybe allowing some more flexibility and thinking about how to do that with in an organized fashion.
Because it's
with
more
enough
complicated
oversight.
an
It is
issue than
complicated.
just saying,
Yeah.
you can't do this, this, and this.
Yeah. Let's see, another item, possible transient occupancy tax increase, the TOT. We are currently at 10%. We're the lowest of the TOT in our area. Comparable cities in SLO, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties are 12 to 13%, and the highest cities in the state have 15% TOT. So currently, we're using 20% of the TOT for street
Mhm.
paving and other infrastructure.
Yeah, for infrastructure, we automatically move 20% to infrastructure projects.
Which is a big help, and because we do have a lot of wear and tear by visitors.
Yeah.
So,
Makes sense.
but actually, so what council moved to actually go for 12.5%. That will appear on the ballot. Staff is to proceed ahead with that, and I think that's to be in the general election, November 2020.
Yes.
Yes.
And then they discussed a mural ordinance. So whereas currently we've got the public art ordinance that would deal with a new development if they wanted to do a mural on a new building. But there's nothing to cover maybe what you might want to consider a sufficient review of a mural on an existing building. So, so council ended up asking staff to draft an ordinance, the city attorney to draft the ordinance on that. So that would apply to murals on non-residential buildings and allow for the possibility with adequate review.
Yeah, it would go up to Arts Commission, and there's just some rules and regulations
Yeah.
currently on my drafting to-do list.
I think that was it. Did you
Good.
have anything? Did I miss anything? Okay.
Good. All right, we've got the complete streets, and I'll do a quick review of that because we met today. In addition, Councilmember Francina and I represented Complete Streets at our Ojai Clean Air Day.
Yeah, first ever.
The
Yes,
first
yeah,
ever.
thank you so
So we
much.
did that, and then we quickly rode over to our next event, which was our regular Complete Streets meeting here at City Hall. But we actually reviewed a report by several of our members of the committee on the Safe Routes to School project that we're looking at, and it's basically for the Topa Elementary School area. And then we also, several meetings back, had reviewed and gone over parking, which we've done off and on over the years. So we went over that. We had done a draft report, gave that to Councilmember Wyrick and Councilmember Francina to share at their parking committee, which is a committee of the city council. And they took some of our recommendations, and actually they created a report, and we reviewed that also. And that, all said and done with a couple other things, took us 2 hours, but it was good. So that's that, and I'm now, do we have anything to say, Ray, about the Sustainability Committee that you'd like to report on?
I'm not sure there's anything.
I don't think we do have anything, but I just thought I'd ask because,
No, I have a couple of public service announcements.
all right, well, we could do that right now. That's fine.
In retrospect, public service announcements. So, yes, but starting today, the California Clean Air Day was really interesting. I went there to take photographs, and those are up online. But Seafrog was there, and Complete Streets was there, and the city brought out their electric landscaping equipment. And I went to the Clean Air website, cleanair.org, and there's actually a pledge. You can pledge as an organization or a pledge as an individual, and there's a checklist of things you're pledging to do. And so I found that interesting, that there were actual action steps.
I did that several weeks ago, so did the pledge.
So that was good to see. And then I do want to mention the town hall meeting that occurred, because there were a good 250 people that came to the town hall meeting regarding pesticide spraying, and just an overall discussion on alternatives to that, on incentives for agriculturalists in the area to help them transition to organics if that's what they want to do. And Senator Hannah Beth Jackson was there, and she pledged to continue her work in the area to get some new regulations in place regarding toxicities and buffer zones to schools and communities and things like that. So I thought that was interesting. Well, more than interesting. I had to leave before the panel discussion was over, but I believe it was all videotaped. One thing I was thinking about, because Steve Sprinkle, someone asked him what he thought about hemp being grown in the valley. And he had mentioned that he had it wasn't a license or certificate or something to grow, and he gave it away, he gave it up, because he felt there was going to be a bubble where right now it's kind of the thing, and then there'll be a glut, and the price is just going to plummet, so he didn't even want to enter there. However, as a soon after that, I saw another article about hempcrete, which is and 3D printing of affordable housing. So they have these 3D printers, and they're using hempcrete, so hemp fiber and limestone, and they're making houses in like 3 days with 3D printers. They just did a pretty good sized development in Denmark with this Australian company. So I thought, well, there's an interesting use for hemp being grown and affordable housing, stacking functions there. So that was just interesting to me. And the last thing I want to mention is just a big thanks to everyone that came out on the 22nd, which is, was a couple weeks ago, to the Ojai International Day of Peace. Came off without a glitch, and we had really good exhibitors. Kathy, you were there, and you spoke, and I thank you for that. And all the speakers and performers were fantastic, and that was all videoed, and will be going up on a Ojai City of Peace YouTube channel, which is currently being created, and I'll be putting all the videos up for that. But it was fascinating. This year's theme was climate action. That was deemed by the United Nations, and it fit hand in glove with the city's new declaration of climate emergency. So it was really a beautiful marriage between peace building and our relationship to the earth and taking care of it.
Good. All right. Last is our city council liaison, which is Councilmember Brian Blatz, but I don't think I've seen Ryan out there all night.
I think he had a conflicting engagement.
Okay.
He wasn't able to be here.
Okay, so is there anything else?
Can I
Of course.
introduce, I know the planning commission met him at the last meeting, but Joe
Yeah.
Fiss, who's been in the crowd the whole meeting. We actually have hired Joe as our assistant city manager. He recently was with the city of Moore Park as the planning manager and the interim community development director. So he's started with us on Monday, and he'll be working with all of us in the future. So.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, we're looking forward to working with you. Good. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. It looks, what is it, 7:30?